Hello everyone, I'm DonTheCrown, and today I want to talk about the Sword of Justice in 33 Immortals. This is a part of a series where we've gone through all of the weapons and even some of the zones, and I've definitely left the worst for last. The Sword of Justice is definitely my least favorite weapon right now because it bills itself as a tank weapon. However, it doesn't really do some of the things that I think is very important for a tank to do. Namely, it does not draw the aggro and ire of enemies, and so it pretty much is just a weak DPS that can offer up a little shield. Once you activate your co-op skill, this will drop it down so that you and two other people will get a shield. And that's really kind of more of a support healery type of thing. The shield does last until it's depleted from taking damage. However, I don't really feel like we're doing a great job of being a tank, and there's only a little bit of crowd control that we can do. The weapon also just does not do a lot of damage here. If we click here for left click, we can see we're going from 80 all the way up to 120 there, depending on where in the combo we're at. But if we hit with a heavy attack, it doesn't really hit all that much harder either, unless we're doing it in a long string. Which is kind of weird because hitting with heavy attack does consume our meter, so you would kind of assume that the damage would be higher. Also, we can right click here to block an attack. However, that will only takes up quite a bit of frames and doesn't really hit all that much harder, and it does consume your meter as well. Also, if you want to do the best DPS with left click here, you kind of want to go and do your combo and then block so that you don't end up doing this final very long spinny attack here, because the damage for it is very small as well. So realistically, I kind of hope that they improve just the general damage of the sword, because it's falling way behind a lot of the other weapons here. For the upgrades, we have Inner Justice, which I think is rather interesting because this now passively gains justice instead of hitting monsters with it. And so we were hitting 10 justice per left swing. And so we can kind of see here that we're gaining a little bit less justice from left click spam. However, this does let us do a heavy attack a lot, does let us block for a lot longer. Just generally makes us have a little bit more accessibility to stuff. The shockwave here makes it so that when our justice is at least half full, we're going to launch a little blast here, which is about equivalent to a left click. However, this is about the same pace of 1/3 of damage increase basically, so it's not super duper effective, but it is a little bit more damage. Spin slash here makes it so that your heavy attack does damage in a huge area, which is kind of okay. But once again, this is not doing any more damage than a light attack, which does kind of suck. Frenzy makes it so that we do attack faster depending on how much our meter is full, which is pretty good. And then lastly, Mighty Slash makes it so our slashes are a lot slower but do a lot more damage. And so our left click kind of becomes our light attack becomes a heavy attack. It does 186. But you notice that if we do a heavy attack, it's not really any more damage on top of that. So to me, this is not really all that great, especially because you're not building co-op meter. Now, the two builds that I kind of want to talk about here are if you want to try to do some damage, you're probably going to do Frenzy and Shockwave. This will allow you to kind of build up attacks really, really quickly. And then you're also going to be pulsing out damage with your shockwave, and you're probably trying to avoid attacking with a heavy attack or blocking too much, because you want to try to keep your justice meter built up as much as possible. And stuff you could potentially pair this with would be relics like the Eagle Talon and the Worn Scapular. This just makes it so that when you dash, you cause a blast at your starting location, and this will pretty much just make it so that you can also weave in with your left clicks dashes to potentially do even more damage, and your dash will be even shorter cooldown, and those dashes do about the same damage as your left click does, and that's probably one of the highest single targets there. The other build here would be Inner Justice with Spin Slash, and kind of the idea with this is you actually do apply a micro stagger when you hit stuff with this, and it will eventually build up to a stun. So if you can kind of get a group of enemies semi-clustered, you can kind of lock enemies down a little bit and make them not able to do some of their annoying attacks. However, this is pretty much just doing what the staff's co-op skill does, just in a tiny area, which is not really all that great. Now, as always, a little bit of gameplay here for you. First up with the Frenzy and Shockwave setup, We can see that I'm not really doing a ton of damage. We have already done one Purgatorio torture chamber at this point, so we have some relics, but we don't really have anything that's particularly giving us a big boost. And for the most part, I kind of find that like on sword, I try to spend a little bit of extra time making sure that other people's co-op skills go off, because like my damage is a little bit worse, and so it just makes more sense to try to make sure that those co-op skills for other people are popping off. I know that like activating a archer's co-op skill is going to be pretty impactful, and so by making sure that those go off is something that's kind of good for the team. Now the other version here with the big spin stun setup here, we can kind of see that a lot of these enemies are just kind of getting hit by this, and there's not really much they can do while I'm hitting them, and it kind of like is building up stun meter. Now sadly we can see that the stun itself though takes forever to build up, and for the most part enemies are just going to die before they actually get stunned. And I think this is something that Thunder Lotus really should look into, because like maybe make the first stun really easy to build up, whereas then you have like a little bit of resistance to it, because it just kind of feels sad to hit an enemy and like it goes up by not even a quarter of the stun bar, knowing that like by the time I actually get the stun off, I could have just killed it on pretty much any other weapon. Also, by the time you get to the elite here, you're pretty much not doing anything super great. Your damage isn't really all that good, and you probably don't want to do the heavy spin attack here, because you are going to not be doing like any more damage with it than a left attack, which just kind of makes your whole like upgrade slots here feel pretty bad. Now for leveling, I highly recommend you put your points into empathy, because really like the shield is the main big thing that you're bringing to the party. And then for relics, if I was wishing in Purgatorio, I'd be looking for Muddy Apostle, Bloodstained Stole. I have a feeling that these are probably a little bit overtuned compared to most of the other relics. These are very, very solid for any build that wants to spam the co-op skill. And then things like Lamp of Purifying Flame and Burnt Cincture could also give you quite a bit of love here. Or you can even go Celestial Green Feather instead of the Burnt Cincture, just to give yourself a little bit more attack as well. Really thing that's kind of strange though is that sword, despite being tank, feels like the squishiest weapon out of all of them, because there's a lot of times where you like go for a counter attack and instead of like getting the counter attack you get hit, or after the counter attack goes off you get hit by a follow-up attack taking damage. I've never been like, you know, never felt closer to death than when playing the tank and then any of the other weapons, which just kind of feels bad. For perks, I kind of like think that the same thing that you look for any build that's kind of going for this, you know, the co-op power. I think Astute Erudite here is very strong. Rejuvenated Vigor is pretty good as well. Renewal of Dust. And then you probably want to go like Imperial Deceptiveness to just give yourself a little bit more damage, but you can instead go with like Morphology of Justice just for damage. This is not very good unless you can actually get your critical strike chance up there quite a bit. So you do kind of like want the Cleric Silas or whatever it is, the thing that gives you more crit. So you could drop this for 25% more guaranteed damage, which is just, you know, very similar amounts of damage there. You could also even swap in more empathy, so you can get more empathy going. But for the most part, like that's kind of what you're looking for there. You could even potentially go and get yourself this one here, Immeasurable Love, which when you level this all the way up to 5 makes it so that once you are below 40% health, you're going to heal for 1% of your health every 5 seconds, which is kind of like a mini lamp as well, just because you're going to be taking a lot of damage trying to like be in melee and try to like actually like counterattack hits. I personally think that this weapon really does need some love. If we just like compare the damage of the weapons, the sword is definitely way behind everybody else, which just kind of feels bad. And I really hope that they either give it some more damage, or they make it so that it has some features to it, like the ability to apply a stun a lot easier, the ability to like taunt in some way would be really, really cool, the ability to like make it so that if I'm blocking an attack, it like makes a circle around me that makes my allies take less damage as well, which should be pretty cool. Just anything else to kind of like add to the group maybe without doing directly more damage, I think could possibly be cool. But right now it just kind of falls behind because the design of the game is so heavy towards DPS. And if you like make yourself the ultimate unkillable tank. I've seen some people do this on Reddit where they're like tanking the boss mechanics, and they are like the only person left alive with like 40 different elites hitting them. Well, if you're an unkillable tank, you're not helping the group. It just kind of is like your chance being bad. If you're tanking everything, you're pretty much creating a situation where only you can survive, as opposed to your allies being able to survive by doing damage. So you're kind of just dragging them down, and you're taking spots and you're taking relics that a DPS could have taken and, you know, helped push the mechanics forward. And so this kind of feels bad. Hopefully they'll fix this up. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and we'll see you guys again soon. Later.